Hey everybody, today I want to talk about the basics of one of the most fundamental tools in any mixing workflow from music through post and beyond. That is automation. There are a lot of creative choices to be made throughout the mixing process, from how loud or quiet things need to be, to processing certain things with EQ, maybe compression, maybe reverb, all of the other sound design tools or dialogue processing techniques that you can use. All of them are done through automating plugins to do the work every single time something plays back. Even if you're just starting out, you've probably already adjusted loudness through level automation, but it gets a whole lot deeper than that. So I want to cover what all the various automation modes are that you'll find in a lot of these DAWs or video editing programs, what they actually do, and how to use them a little bit more effectively, and show you how I use them in my mixing workflow. Before we get started, if you enjoy these videos, you want to support my channel, head on over to alexknickerbocker.com, where I've got a bunch of different sound effects libraries that are royalty-free, curated from my personal collection for your use on any project. You'll find everything from transitions and sound design to ambiences and backgrounds, even really specific Foley like footsteps, cloth movements, and more. I've also got a professional post-production mixing template built out for Pro Tools, or if you want to learn how to build your own templates in any software using major studio concepts, you can check out my course on how to build a professional mixing template up on Udemy at the links in the description. You can also donate if you'd like. Anything really helps me spend more time on this channel sharing major studio ideas and concepts with everyone. All right, if you're not already familiar with the concept of automation, basically it allows you to perform the moves of a mix. So adjusting levels depending on what kind of content is playing back, maybe shifting an EQ parameter here and there to address certain frequencies that are changing as the timeline moves, things of that nature. We can talk all day about how to mix certain elements like dialogue or music, but when it comes down to it, automation is the way that it's going to happen. So understanding how it all works and what different modes you can use is going to be really powerful. All of them are pretty common between all the different programs that are out there. When it comes to the major studio world, the audio program that's in use all the time is Avid's Pro Tools. So I'm going to show you what they are in that. The default automation mode for pretty much every program out there is just read. That means whatever mix is currently playing back, even if there's no mix at all, the program is just going to read any of the information about how to play back sounds and just do that. It's not going to be writing any information. It's not going to be taking any input from the user unless there is no automation written already. Pretty straightforward concept. The opposite of read mode is write. Any track that is write enabled is going to write every single parameter of every plugin and every possible control of that track as it's playing back. So it can be really destructive if you're not actually intending to write all automation all the time, but that means any plugin that I adjust a band of EQ on, or I move a fader up and down to adjust levels, it's going to hard write that into the mix and it will play back the next time I switch over to read mode. I very rarely use write mode in my workflow because it literally writes every possible parameter that's enabled, but there are some instances that are important that I'll get to in a few minutes. The next mode that I use all the time is called touch automation. Touch mode is probably where I'm going to live the majority of a mix session. Basically, as a mix is playing back, any parameter that I move, any control that I adjust, it will write that into the session, but only on the thing that I've actually changed. None of the other parameters that I haven't adjusted will have any differences to them. And on top of that, as soon as I let go of a controller, whether I'm using a mouse or an actual console, as soon as I don't touch that anymore, it's going to return to wherever it was before. So it's really useful for pretty much any part of a mix, but especially for making finer tuned adjustments just in between certain mix moves that already exist. The next automation mode is Latch. Touch and Latch are pretty similar in function for the most part. As soon as you start playing back a mix and you're not touching anything, they'll just play the existing moves back, any parameter changes, any level changes you might already have. The difference is when you actually start moving parameters around. With touch, as soon as you click on something or you touch a parameter to change, it'll write automation, and when you let it go, it'll stop writing, it'll return to wherever it was that it was originally written at. With Latch mode, instead of returning, it'll keep writing the automation at wherever that parameter was when you stopped touching it. And that can be good for certain situations, but also dangerous for others if you've got a mix that you want to keep and maybe you mistakenly put it in Latch mode and it overwrites a bunch of the material that you actually wanted to hang on to. It can be really useful when maybe you've got two audio files that need to be playing back at the same level, but they're broken apart by a few seconds of silence, so you don't necessarily want to use touch mode where you have to write the levels of one down, and as soon as you let go and that audio is no longer playing, it returns back to maybe a normal level, and then you have to grab it again and try and find that same level to keep writing automation. Latch will actually let you just let go of the parameter, maybe do something else, and then return to that controller at the exact same place that it was, so you're not having to keep track of where everything is real time live during a mix. Again, generally I'm working in touch mode for the most part, but Latch does have its uses, and I do find myself switching over to that every now and then. Pro Tools specifically has an interesting mode called Touch Latch as well. Touch Latch is a combination of the two parameters, where the actual level automation, the fader itself of the channel, is on touch mode. So when I adjust it, it'll return back to wherever it was before I'd been writing the parameter. Everything else is going to be in latch mode. So all of my plugins, all of my EQs, my dynamics processing, maybe if I've got a reverb somewhere on the track, all of that stuff is going to be in latch. So if I adjust a parameter, it's going to stay that way until I stop playing back and it commits all the automation to my tracks. I generally don't find myself in that mode very much either, but just like latch, it does have its place, it does have its uses, and it can be really helpful when you need it. The final mode is actually a more modification of existing modes, and it's called trim. Trim automation is like a secondary layer of mixing capabilities underneath your primary layer of automation. So taking level information, for example, let's say I've got a mix move that I really like, and everything is exactly playing back how I want it, except in one part of that mix move, maybe I dipped the fader a little bit too low. I like how it's balanced and I like how that section plays back. It's just I want it to be maybe a couple of dB or maybe half a dB higher than that performance actually was. I can play back in trim and just boost the level up slightly, modifying the existing performance of automation by just pushing things up a little bit or pulling things back a little bit. That works on every single automatable parameter of every plugin and every layer of this software. Again, just to modify existing automation performances. So again, if you have a mix that you really like, but maybe one little section of one instrument or one line of dialogue just dips a little bit too low or jumps out a little bit too high, the rest of the performance is good, trim can be really useful in dialing existing mix moves back or forward and accentuating existing stuff rather than having to rewrite it entirely. So with all that in mind, I want to show you how I use automation in my mixing workflow. I actually mix in touch trim pretty much all the time, and I use a Pro Tools specific function called preview to do so. What that allows me to do is, rather than playing back and having to write everything in real time, generally if I'm processing dialogue or sound effects and I need to mix each element individually, I can put Pro Tools into preview mode, and that will allow me to adjust all these different parameters before I actually commit to any of them. That way I can hear how they all sound, I can make any fine-tuning adjustments, and then I can write them and commit them only to where I want them to exist. That way, as I'm playing back and all my levels and all my plugins are doing whatever it is they need to do, they're only going to be working in certain moments where they're needed and not in others where they're not going to be doing anything. So not only does it free up a lot more processing power on my computer, it also keeps everything a lot more organized and it tailors everything to specific pieces of audio rather than having to change across entire tracks and entire plugins just to get one piece of audio mixed properly. Now, obviously, there's a lot deeper of a dive to be done here, not just in the technical aspects of automation, but in the creative uses as well. But understanding the fundamentals and just how to interact with any software you might be using that allows for automation is really going to allow you a lot more power and flexibility in your mixes and to discover a lot of these techniques on your own. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to hit like, hit subscribe, comment below with any questions you have about automation or mixing. I'm over on Instagram at AXK, so come follow me over there. And as always, thanks for watching.